Good evening and welcome to DarkHour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael Roser. And tonight, folks, I have the one and only Michael Horn here with us to discuss everything from Billy Meier contacts to his own work with him being an author, his spiritual experiences. We're gonna cover it all tonight, but I'm incredibly excited to have Michael with us. We got a heavy hitter tonight, folks. Somebody who knows their stuff. And I'll be honest with you guys, if you don't know who Michael Horn is, I'm going to read you a little something about him right now. And I'll be honest with you, as much as I've included in his bio here, there's so much more. Please check the link in the description. You will find all of his creative work, including his website, www.theyfly.com, where you can find everything from videos to blogs that he's written about all of the things that we're going to be speaking about tonight. So Michael Horn has over 40 years of experience as a science researcher. In 1986, Michael found previously unknown warnings about man-made climate change and global warming, also foretelling increased frequency and intensity of all forms of storms, blizzards, tsunamis, and so forth. The warnings, which were in the information he found in 1979, were originally published beginning in 1951 by a Swiss man by the name of Billy Meier. Meier also warned about the damage to ozone layer from A-bomb explosions and about the connection between the extraction of petroleum and earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, all of which were subsequently scientifically corroborated. In 2004, after 25 years of research into Meier's information and the evidence substantiating his claims, Michael also became the voluntary authorized American media representative for the Billy Meier contacts. Thanks also to the 8-month-long investigation by the formerly skeptical USAF OSI investigator and supervisor Joe Tisk, the Meier contacts have now been proven to be absolutely authentic. Let that sink in for a minute. Some of you guys have been following him for a while. Michael is the writer and producer of the award-winning feature-length documentary, And Did They Listen?, as well as the Time Fulfills, The Silent Revolution of Truth, and The Meier Contacts, The Key to Our Future Survival. Michael Horn has consistently demonstrated enormous creativity and being well ahead of his time. He is the creator of the innovative, interactive, mindful, and stress relief program, Standing in Spirit. And we're going to be talking about that as well tonight. But without further ado, I want everybody here. Thank you for joining us, by the way, everyone. I'm going to bring on Rick's Realm as my co-host tonight, and we'll bring on our guest, Michael Horn. Everybody say hello. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Very nice to see you.
Hello.
Doing well, Michael. Excellent. So once again, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, taking time out of your busy schedule, because my goodness, my friend, I've seen some of your media and where you've been. You are out there and you are working hard. So thank you for that. Without further ado, I'd like to go into some of the current events that are being discussed right now with the situation that we've all been going through for the last 4 months. So with that in mind, with respect to COVID, Billy warned us back in 1989, 1995, and 2003, but we did not listen. What can we do now, especially when people are so divided on whether this is some sort of conspiracy or real life threatening disease? Where do we find clarity?
Well, you've raised, the question of the day, the most important story going on right now. Or story is a funny word when we talk about a story, when we talk about a pandemic. So where do we go today? I would suggest that people start to research this material, this information. And you mentioned, 1989, 95, 2003. We have all of this on my blog. And, it's almost, where do you start to try to inform people? Look, let's jump for a moment to the ideas that are being floated around, the conspiracies, and this is an evil plot, and Bill Gates and all the rest. First of all, I don't know that Bill Gates is or isn't the devil incarnate. Okay, who knows? And right now, who cares? Because what we've got to do is we've got to get a grip on the reality of the situation. And what is so important, I have to always pause when I talk about this particular thing, because right now the lives of so many people truly hang in the balance, and it means any of us. This is an Ebola level pandemic. It's not some crazy conspiracy cooked up just to get people, to be controlled by the evil elite and all that business. The real numbers of people dying can be validated. I'll tell you in a moment a story that pertains to the state that I'm living in. And so what we have to do is we have to become reasonable. We have to think our way through this and virtually everything else that's going on in the world. People are so addicted to searching online to try to get information and get the true story. We are bombarded with disinformation. We have been even before the internet, but let's face it, the internet's here the last, let's even say 20 years of internet. It's gone on a bit longer, but everything that goes on the internet that shoots up overnight or suddenly appears, and the latest conspiracy, people who are posting this stuff are very desperate to gain followings, to be the ones who find the truth. So they also get sucked into bad information. I would say at this point, if you want the truth, there are some simple ways to find it here. And I'm going to get right to that. But I want to set this up in a way that people can understand. I'm not selling you an internet cure. I'm not trying to get you to join a group or anything else. And Billy Meier certainly at the core of all this isn't doing that either. If it's true that Billy Meier meets with extraterrestrials for the past 78 years, and if it's really true that for 68 years he's been publishing, since he's a 14-year-old boy, almost 70 years, really, he's been publishing specific, prophetically accurate scientific information that is proved to be from 5 days to 60 years ahead of our scientists. If we can grasp that for ourselves, and there's some easy ways to do it, we might be able to get ourselves straightened out and protect ourselves, our family, our friends, those people that'll listen. So I'm going to make a little jump here to the information that I actually received on February 23rd. I published it on the 25th after reading it myself and thinking it through. Because look, if you're going to post something online about, even in those relatively early days, about a pandemic and, a serious disease, unparalleled in modern times, you don't want to contribute to the garbage. You don't want to contribute to the conspiracies, to misleading people and possibly helping to endanger people's lives. So we published an article called The Harsh Truth about COVID-19 or coronavirus or whatever from the Play Iron. It's all on the blog. You can see it very easily. In that article, there were a minimum of 12 very specific points. It starts off February 23rd, February 25th, I published, stating, this is a pandemic. You must avoid public transportation. You must avoid travel. You should self-isolate. Basically telling us it's a pandemic. This should be a lockdown, quarantine, a bunch of very specific facts. I mean, I could bring up my own blog and start reading it off to you, but it was not until March 11th, a little over 2 weeks later, that the CDC and the WHO announced this is a pandemic. And every one of the other specific points, with the exception of maybe two, and I'll get to them, were subsequently corroborated by the CDC and the WHO. Now, I'm not telling you the CDC and the WHO are our standard for truth. I'm telling you they proclaim themselves the authorities. They're publishing new discoveries, which are simply coming after what has been online on my blog from Billy Meier. I didn't create that, since February 25th. Now, that tells us also in that information a bunch of other stuff about the nature of this disease, that it's airborne, that it can be picked up from surfaces, stuff that we don't discover for weeks or months later. This is where it gets very interesting. Now, there's two very important parts in that blog that have not yet been corroborated that are very, very essential to our survival. Number one, the Plejaren told Meier, and they told him even before this date, but this is when we published it, this disease has an actual incubation period up to 3 months. Not 14 days, not 30 days, 3 months. That means, and we're the first to publish, that it's mainly spread by asymptomatic carriers, and the other group of the main hidden spreaders were children who would be initially immune. And then Meier already had information stating, well, children will no longer be immune after a short period of time. As a matter of fact, we will start seeing this in children younger and younger, right down to infants in their mother's wombs. That's validated on July 9th. We had that information from Meier. I forget the exact date we published it, but they published it months earlier. I think maybe February 3rd or whatever. If people understand the copyright, it's an internationally recognized standard of proof of first publication. What it means in this case, because we have a blog and we published on a certain date, it was on the internet on that date, there's comments on that date underneath, and subsequently, it's easy to prove. We published it before anybody. Now, when you look at another piece or two of information in there, to thoroughly contain, control, and stop the spread of the disease, we must have, for all medical personnel, hazmat level suits and breathing apparatuses, and hermetically sealed quarantines. That means the hospitals, the medical facilities where they are observing or dealing with suspected or corroborated COVID people must have these airlock rooms. Why? Because this thing, as we told people on February 20th, it's transmitted through the air. It's carried by personnel in and out of hospitals. It's got a 3-month incubation period. Somebody can be working in a hospital. Suddenly, a month and a half, 2 months, 2.5, 3 months later, they're sick. And they've spread it. That's why this disease that arose in China, where they should have locked down immediately, we were the first to tell you that too. It's spread around the world and people can't figure out. They're saying, well, nobody I know was in China or Iran or Italy. Nobody that I know was traveling in those. Didn't matter. You could have people who were in China or had passed through or been in an airport, got on planes going other places, end up in other countries, take public transportation in Norway, get on a flight that goes to New York. This is spread all over the world because of the facts that the Plejaren, in an unprecedented outreach to the people of Earth, gave us to warn us. This thing is so deadly, and you gamble with your life and the lives of others if you don't at least consider now. So we've got these facts that have yet not been recognized, this longer incubation period, the need for the hermetically sealed quarantines. There's a doctor in New York City. He found out about this information. Early on, he was warning people. And he had an interview on Al Jazeera, World News. He did a 7-minute interview and got edited down to 4 minutes. He's telling people all of these bullet points. He's telling his medical associates these bullet points. He's not telling them, that it's coming from Billy Meier. Okay, he because people attack Billy Meier, attack anybody that talks about Billy Meier. So here's how people could say, well, wait a minute, why should we take your word for it? This is too weird. It's pretty weird. I put up a reference page on my blog. It's reference page for press releases that I put out and for all of the documentation whereby anybody who understands what I've said so far or what I'm going to say now to chunk it down can go there. They can, and if you know doctors, if you know attorneys, if you know people who understand legalities about publishing, which is simple for any of us to understand. For instance, let's just say that you Guy Ricks, or you, Michael, you publish an article, a blog, this interview on a given date. And somebody 3 weeks or 3 months later publishes whatever it is you published. You can walk into a court of law and in 2 minutes, there's some pretty big trials that have gone on about copyrighted material that were more complex. But if you can go, Your Honor, date, publication, you prevail. I ran this whole idea, not with COVID, but with another thing about the Meier case. 2011, I ran it by a judge at a crazy MUFON event in Las Vegas that they gave me a table for. I don't know why they did it, but anyway, this guy was a skeptic on the Meier case. I believe in UFOs, but this Meier case has got to be a hoax. So I said to the guy, well, what do you do? He said, I'm a retired judge. I said, oh, okay, Your Honor.
Oh, wow.
Can I step into your courtroom? And the guy was so cool, tough guy, but he got it right away. He says, yes, how can I help you? I said, Your Honor, we're diverging here, but I just want people to understand because I'm going to take them right to the payoff right after this. Your Honor, if I tell you that NASA's claim that they're the first to discover that the surface of the planet Mercury is shrinking because of the metal core within it, if I tell you that I got a buddy in Switzerland who he came out with that first, would I have to prove that to you? The guy looks at me and says, well, of course you'd have to prove it. So I pick up a book that we had on the table. I said, Your Honor, open right away the front page. Do you see the copyright date here? Yes. Scroll through. And I knew where this other, I don't know why I knew right where it was. I said, do you see this? There's a conversation here and the date is earlier, but we have the outside date at the cup. Yes. And Billy Meier, my Swiss friend, says to this alleged extraterrestrial woman, I've always wondered what the reason was for this contraction of the surface of the planet Mercury. She said, well, that's not difficult. It's because of the metal core. I said, Your Honor, closing the book, put it aside. In your courtroom, who prevails? You do. How much is the film? How much is the book? Bought up everything. Because he's not a UFO fanatic. He might be, but that's not his main crime. He was, I'm sure, an attorney. He's a retired judge, and he understands this is a legal thing. So, okay, where's this going? Okay, on my research page, I have 22 items numbered down, and I may add some more. I mean, we have so many, we could go all day. We have over 250 examples of prophetically accurate scientific information from Billy Meier you can take to the bank. Okay, so I've got 22 things pertaining to COVID. The last two are things that I simply had published myself by thinking about what was coming. I published them back, I don't know, April and March, and they've happened. I forewarned about the difficulties in the supply chain, the shortage possibilities around food, the fact that people were going to start to freak out. They wouldn't handle being locked down. There could be, okay, I just thought, because anybody could figure this out. So I wrote about it, and it's right there, but this is an example. It doesn't have to be Billy Meier or a scientist. Okay, so the first 20, I included all the bullet points from our February 25th blog and a bunch of other stuff, including the in vitro infection of an infant. And there it is. You can click on it. Then I searched on the internet using that information, the earliest. What's the earliest that this was officially announced? Now, let me just say, it's possible that I missed something in a search. It's possible that there was a document, but I've got otherwise 20 of those ironclad. You can literally you walk into a courtroom. And I'll tell you a thing in a moment. I'll tell you what happened is we just got censored for all this stuff. So when somebody online goes, okay, reference page for press releases, They Fly blog. Oh, here it is. Oh, number 2 is highlighted. What is it? Red or whatever. Yeah, I see these things. Okay, let me click on the first one. Billy Meier. They say it's a pandemic. Oh, yeah, that's what they said then. I click on this. Wait a minute. February 25th, that's published. And March 11th, like you said, CDC announces it officially. That's it. Game over. Now, we don't have 1, we don't have 3, we don't have 5, we don't have 9, we have 20. And we have more because there's more stuff in there that we've got a bunch of documents from the player, and I've even posted a new one, I think, yesterday. So we got to go, wait a minute. Here's what happened censored. I put out a couple of press releases with this one company. Actually, 2 companies. The first one censored us. I found another company because they wouldn't put out anything else. So I put out 2 on COVID. And then yesterday, 2 days ago, actually, it was supposed to come out in the morning about my new blog and new video up online about the, did or will Pentagon, I forget what the heck my title is, will they reach out to the Pleiaren ET for help with COVID? Now, what's that based on? Wait, am I talking too much? Just one
No, you're doing great, Michael. You're doing just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I get excited about this because it's
yep, that's fine.
I've been at this researching for over 40 years since I was a 2-year-old child. Yeah. Okay. So here's the stuff. We got the reference page, right? And so I put out this thing about will the Pentagon, because see, the Pentagon's been publishing stuff on UFOs. And in my blog and in my video, I say, the Pentagon has shown us these stunning UFO videos that are the equivalent of 1970s video games. Well, we've got a lot better evidence. We've got Billy Meier's photos and his films and all this. And we have something else. What nobody knows, very few people know, some do. In 1979, the Pleiaren authorized Billy Meier to compose a letter offering contact to the Carter administration, U.S. government, president. And it's just like a 5-6 page letter. And it's pretty long, a lot of terms in there, conditions. And they gave it to one of the lead investigators. There were 3. And he was actually a skeptic initially about the case. And he was also connected to the CIA. So that was, people knew, but they said, okay, you're in the case, fine. He brings it to the Carter administration, and they turn down the contact with the Pleiaren. Not completely unexpectedly, if you have the opportunity to read the whole letter, it was pretty hardcore about what these are our terms. You can't do this, you can't do that, and you have to tell the American people this and let them know about that. Well, basically in that letter, and just so people know, because we don't hide the fact that the Pleiaren are very harsh about our politics, our religion, our government, and others. And so, especially because of their criticism about the religions that people believe in with no evidence, they said one of the things is you have to tell the American people that all their religions and beliefs are fantasies and lies. Well, I read that. So 10 years ago, I said to Billy, because we brought it up, I said, Billy, what are they thinking? He's a Baptist minister. He takes one look at that and they shred it, even though Jimmy Carter said he saw UFOs. And I think quite possibly they had shown their ships to him or something, just a little sighting, but he wouldn't go for it. So the premise of my blog, the premise of my press release that got censored, and the premise of my video is, will the Pentagon reach out again? Recognize that what's hanging in the balance here, the fate of tens to literally hundreds of millions, up to 500 million people, folks, with the COVID. And you're going to see this. Keep this interview handy that my friend Michael here has been kind enough to do, and wait and see when you come back to this. Okay, so that many people's lives can be in the balance here. Would the Pentagon consider trying to make an overture to say, will these people help us? And I'll give you another reason for it too in a minute, which I haven't written about in this blog, but I will. Because this is pretty serious stuff. How much more serious you get? But I also said in my press release and my video, you're dealing with very pragmatic and very cynical people who are in the military industrial arm of things. Some of them are also very religious, what have you. Fine. We are entitled to our own beliefs. If people have them, that's it. Billy Meier, they simply say, well, we're telling you this is not based on fact, it's fantasy. Okay, fine. You're entitled to that too, Billy, right? So here's the thing. You now have potentially, and I don't think I'm wrong in the possibility that there are smart people at the Pentagon who have said, hey, should we consider trying to, at the risk of acknowledging that Billy Meier is telling the truth and it's a real contact case, should we see if we can get some help here? And it's very possible that they'll say, no, it's not worth it, even if we lose 500 million people. We don't want to.
Let me ask you very quickly, not to interrupt you, but when the Pleiaren reached out to the Carter administration through Billy Meier, why did they do it that way? Was it because they'd already established a contact with Billy Meier. Why didn't they go directly to somebody who was in a governmental body? It was my understanding that we already had contact and agreements with other species. Why did they decide to do it the way they did?
Because that whole thing about contact with other species is more of the terrible disinformation that's come out of ufology, the UFO community, the various self-proclaimed experts, not a one of whom, and I'm open to debate on this, not a one of whom has one piece of evidence of verifiable extraterrestrial manufacture. Now, just that, we can deal with that or not, doesn't matter. But here, to answer your question, because you were right in saying they contacted Billy Meier. Now, part of what they've explained is this: they cannot directly contact the people on a planet, the governments and the peoples who are not yet a space traveling race, who have not yet come to realizations that they're not alone in the universe. And so they can't inflict on us the reality of their existence. And as I said further in my blog and press release and everything, don't expect, should this ever come about, don't expect close encounters of the third kind. Ooh, music and get a little wide-eyed. No, because we may not even see their craft if they did agree to this contact. We might, but we might not, because it has to be conducted through Meier as the authorized representative for these people. And more than likely, and this is purely the whole thing is only my estimation, we would be asking questions and they would pass the answers through Meier that they were allowed to give us. They can't give us any information of a medical nature that can be turned into weapons, because that's our specialty, killing each other. That's what we major in for the past tens of thousands of years, not peace and prosperity and love and free. No, we figure out ways to annihilate ourselves. And when if we talk about the origin of the disease, you'll see that is no understatement about killing ourselves off. So what would happen in my scenario is we've learned that in Europe there are now immunologists and virologists studying Billy's information, the play arm information, because there are keys in there to progressing towards control, containment, and stopping the spread. But here's something we have to understand. What has been called for in terms of lockdown, self-isolation, max, that is the main thing that, had we listened to Meier's information, you must maintain a lockdown for 3 to 8 months, we would have by now been on the verge of containment. We're right now on the verge of a massive spread that will just keep going and going for a long time. This disease right now does not have a cure. The hydroxyquinoline, or what it was called, that one.
I know the word you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, hydroxyquinine, perhaps it is, something like that. It maybe has some benefits for certain stages of treatment, but we have to understand this thing, once you get it, you have it for life. It can go dormant, but then it can also start to provoke other illnesses, a resurgence of this disease. It is unprecedented in its virulence, in its way it damages all organs, all the stuff that we subsequently published after February 25th that they're now discovering. This is no joke. So if there was information that the Plejaren had that could help our scientists, who then would have to do their own due diligence and their test, all the stuff, they could ask and it could be forwarded. Now, the reason I even came up with this is for another point that had occurred to me, because I remembered something from 1987. In 1987, Meier published something called the Henoch Prophecies. They're pretty heavyweight stuff. And they were ostensibly first proclaimed or written by the prophet Henoch or Enoch over 10,000 years ago. Enoch was said to be one of the original contact people as well with the player. There have been 6 other people besides Meier throughout history. So we're told. You can take it or leave it, think about it, whatever. But this document, the Enoch prophecies, oh boy. You see things in there that are pretty startling. Now, in 1987, Meier gets this information and publishes it. And before one of the player named Quetzal dictates it to him and explains it all to him, he says to him, you've got a pretty thankless gig here. You're like a guy, a lone voice in the wilderness, and people will keep ignoring you for a long time to come. That's how it's going to go. But one day, when the prophecies are fulfilling or have fulfilled, the people of Earth will seek and allow our help as it will be offered through you. And I keep thinking about that. Well, if we ever needed help, this is a good time for it.
Now's the time.
Right. Now, it's improbable for many reasons, but I'm just, I'm not a pessimist. I'm not a delusional optimist. I'm realistic, and I'm also optimistic. And if they said one day the people of Earth will ask for our help as it's presented through you, why not now? Maybe it doesn't come. Maybe it's up to us. You see, we have crazy people that just want to control everything in all facets of life. So here we are. Everybody wants to control everything, and this is out of control. The trillions of dollars spent overtly, covertly in black projects on military weapons, those missiles and bombs, and they can't kill off this invisible little thing. So here we are, a big, powerful. We're stuck, right? So if people take the time and they go to that reference page and they just do this, they can do what we've just been prohibited from more broadly informing them about. They can go and prove for themselves that this is real and true. And if they want to start speaking up or spreading this information amongst their friends and associates, instead of this crap online, it's getting people killed. It's a way for people to take their lives under, their own control a bit more. So I should probably stop there. I don't know if you have any questions from people, or anything. I just want to try to, put it out there for folks.
No, this is great. We're jumping off the diving board. And I'll be honest with you, through what you had just said and with such comprehension, you answered a couple of the questions I had lined up, which is great because that's where we were going anyway. I have one more on this particular topic before I think we should move on a little bit. But this is very important. And of course, we're at the helm of something here and have been there for a while. And, people are looking for that clarity because there's so many different perceptions about what's really happening. So it's often said that something else may be responsible for illness or disease, such as an emotional imbalance, personal energetic turmoil, spiritual neglect, just to name a few. How does this perception of sickness fit into our current situation with COVID? Are pandemics and epidemics reflective of our collective imbalances?
Well, let me approach it this way, because those are really good questions. I'm glad you have such intelligent people. I'm serious. We don't need to go, well, I've done all these coast to coast shows, George North, 20 times, and it goes way back to Art. I just saw this object thing in the sky and a little fuzzy green. Okay, so we don't need those. So to answer it, first of all, this ties in at its foundation with the reason for the Meier case, which is to be found in what's called the spiritual teaching, which is a non-religious, belief-free teaching. That means something that we can study, just like we can study how to fix computers or automobiles or grow pears or whatever you want to do. I do that. If you go through an instruction, if it's true and good, you get the result that it tells you should get. The spiritual teaching is about how we think, our emotions, our feelings, how they emanate from our thinking, not the other way around. How feelings arise from thoughts that, for the most part, we're rarely even aware we're having. the spiritual teaching that Meier has written, in truth, Meier even says much of this is not his authorship. It's the authorship of this universe, this creation that precedes all of us by countless billions and trillions of years. It's the laws of this universe as made manifest in very clear, present, easy language for the most part, somewhat difficult to grasp at times because we're being presented with things that are completely outside of anything our religions and philosophies have brought us, and also some things that are better explained about our better thinking pertaining to how the mind and body are related in our health, right? Because this is at the core of a lot of stuff. I'll tell you, I have a DVD out that I can tell you about because I have a whole therapeutic process I created years ago that subsequent to my doing it for a few years, I sent him a DVD, he said, yeah, teach that. That's what we're talking about. Okay. The mind has a lot to do. The mind feeling action matrix has a lot to do with our health, our well-being on the physical and emotional, mental, every level, but it doesn't control everything. Something like COVID, let's put it this way, according to Plairon, who've said, we've never seen a virus like this. This is unprecedented. They're not going to tell us just stay in positive thinking because it's not strong enough in terms of the reality. This is a genetically engineered pathogen. And it's a little different than a lot of people think it is too, and where and how. Okay, we'll get to that. If we study and start to grasp this spiritual teaching, what it is and how it teaches us to train and use our mind and tap into the inner teacher and be accessible to the instruction from outside and the inspiration from this creation, this universe, we are better able to sense, to heed, to navigate, to fortify ourselves with all sorts of the nutrients of life, the things that support the immune system in terms of nutrients and diet and exercise, and not getting crazy with exercise. We just posted information from the player, and we are crazy with sport. Yeah, I mean, and there'll be some new stuff I'm going to be putting up in a few days that is going to be very helpful for health. And it isn't from Billy. It's from a martial arts system that I learned about a few decades ago. It's beautiful, health enhancing information that's compatible, in my opinion, with the essence of a lot of the things that are taught in the Meier case. Non-aggression, relaxation, breathing, friendliness and cheerfulness, believe it or not, coming from a martial arts system. Okay, so relating again to that question about, illness, many things, conditions are psychosomatic. There are placebos and nocebos have a place in medicine. I know a guy who's a prominent physician. He knows the Meier material. He's written articles about that. So this is not something to be scoffed at by any stretch of imagination. It's just that in the case of the COVID situation, coronavirus COVID, we are dealing with something that is unprecedented as a pathogen. It had a very evil intent in the creation of it. It's not what most people think in terms of how it was created. Bill Gates didn't create it, pretty clearly, and things like that. So take those things that make sense when you can read something and you can say, well, is that logical or not? Does that make sense? Heed. We want to heed warnings. We want to calm down and invigorate at the same time. Those things are connected. So yes, if that helps in that answer, the mind-body connection, the connection between the way we think and how it can contribute to our health. It's not everything. There are certain things you can catch, even if you're a good, healthy, positive thinking person, whatever you want to call it. The real world, there are deadly things. You can get, hit by a car because while
yes.
There you go. So I don't know if that helps the person who asked the question. I hope it does. And if you need to elaborate or go on any more on this track, take it anywhere you want to go, because I want to try to deliver as much of the reference to the relevant material that people can then check out for themselves.
I really enjoyed that response. I'll be honest with you. It's not an easy question. None of these questions that we have are easy. But digging into your wealth of information and knowledge and experience, that was really well said, man. I like that. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Moving on here, slightly, because this is still sort of a current thing. Billy mentions the possibility of civil war in America, perhaps sooner than we think. With respect to the fluctuating trajectories human beings take on as a whole, is it possible we may choose a different timeline or collective experience before we reach the point of violence? Can we avoid that?
Well, it'd be nice to say yes, because in many cases, see, prophecies that first appeared in 1981 and 1987 in the Hannock prophecies. Prophecies are given with the intention that human beings will pay attention and change the course direction. Then we can avoid certain things. Well, we are already in the early stages of the Civil War. It's pretty clear. It doesn't mean that tomorrow or in 2 weeks or 2 months, the streets are filled with people shooting each other. But we have seen that certain people already, for some time, started to act out through kind of political, ideological, philosophical premises to attack others. It does go on. We have situations in certain cities. And right now, and even originally, going back a year and a half or more, I did point it out in my blog for some time, and I've been publishing those warnings, article upon article since 2013. It's in one of my films where I state it. I even say, well, Meier warned in terms of a time. Information from 1975 from Meier talks about 2020 as being a pivotal time. So I think that based on what we're seeing, unless people, no matter what their ideological bent is, decide to become reasonable, this will break up the country. We have COVID going on now. That could slow things up perhaps in some senses, but look, you've got cities like, let's just say Portland or Austin or this, that, and the other thing. People come in who are on a certain political bender and they tear things down. They're protesting the death of a man who, for all we can tell, was brutally murdered by a policeman. He may or may not have been a criminal. It doesn't matter. You see a man lying there being killed. That's not what the police are for. You take a person into custody and then you put them through the legal system. And that's not the first time a black person, man and woman, has been murdered. Clearly, is there racism in this country? Oh my, yes, of course there is. Does it mean everybody's racist? Not by a stretch. But here's the problem, and we have to be honest about this. If you truly want to honor somebody's death and their life, and the whole idea that we need to raise ourselves up to a much better people and behavior, you come out, if you're going to come out, you do not go to create brick throwing, building burning, statue toppling, violence promoting, lasers in the eyes, and you don't go and unmask and you burn down police state. It's certainly, we understand, but that doesn't bring the thing you claim you're about. It just doesn't work. Yeah, I grew up in the 60s and there were protests against the Vietnam War. They did topple the government then, in effect. They stopped the war. They disrupted everything, so much so. But they were directed primarily. And, I can't tell you I remember everything about it. They were directed at bringing the government to account and to stopping that thing. And marches, not all the marches were going into violence. And the problem is, of course, they're walking around with the peace symbol, which is upside down, literally the rune, the symbol for death. That's what our peace symbol is. Remember when people would walk around going, peace? They didn't do this. That's gangsters. That's death. That's the energy going down. That's just peace. We forgot that. And so we're carrying the symbol for death. Okay. And we do a peace meditation. It's done on behalf of our world by 3.2 or something billion extraterrestrial human beings. There's 35,000 people on the planet now doing it. You can join in for free. It's easy to find out about. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to join a group. You can do it if you want. Okay. Anyhow, so the left, the far left, has demonstrated great ability to tear things down. Not any ideas. Even in the 60s, there were better ideas. And it's an excuse for people who have nothing better to do and nothing to show for their lives. I'll just be blunt about it. Let's go out and feel important and we're doing something and let's tear it all down. I'm not on the right either. On the right, you've got rigid, hyper-religious, flag-waving people who are a lot of races. It's true, not everybody, because there are good people on the right too, just as there are on the left. You get the word far and you work it off, you don't see it anymore because it's off the right has militias and racist groups up the wazoo waiting for the moment to do their thing. Don't think this isn't going to be answered if people continue this kind of thing. And don't think that there aren't powers that be behind both elements that are pushing for it for their own agendas. Remember, in the Meier material, 2 terrible civil wars, one, following upon the other, and it can't be helped that the country breaks up into 5 different territories with various sectarian dictatorial rule playing an important role. Well, my guess is here, sectarian dictatorial rule isn't going to be radical Islam. This country isn't going to go that way. You've got places like maybe, Minnesota, possibly in Michigan, a couple of where people who are Islamic or Muslim, they don't have to be Islamists. Islamists are the ISIS, the crazy killers. They're not even Muslims. They're not actually Muslims. They've just taken it up so they can go out and destroy, as they've done. Torn down antiquities and destroy and terrible thing. We haven't heard the last of that. That's another thing. But let's come back to this. Sectarian dictatorial rule more than likely is going to be right-wing Christian stuff. I'm guessing. Maybe somebody will come up with another kind of sectarian bent for certain areas, but the left and the far left would be wise. The people involved, if they really don't want the racism and all the rest of it, who does, they would start thinking about how do we decide what we do want that's in harmony with real eternal life values. And then the folks on the right, what if they sat down and thought, what do we really want that's in harmony with real eternal life values that don't require us to force down the throat of people our beliefs about a sky daddy and his only begotten son who was born 2,000 years ago and died for your sins before you were born and able to think about commitment. Okay, well, we won't get into it because look, I have friends who have beliefs, religious beliefs. I stay away from it for the most part, but I'm not hiding the fact that the Playaran and Meier go, oh my goodness, thousands of years of this, and people, because they've already said, Christianity, radical Islam, Judaism, this is the time when they are going to come together, clash. So we talk about this idea that you brought up, well, time, can we alter the time? All I think we can do right now is for the individual to do what has been recommended actually for thousands of years, study the spiritual teaching, because you're not asked to believe anything. You're not told to go out and in the name of some deity, go slay your brothers and sisters somewhere. And you're not told that you take on something that you've got to accept, or when you die, you're going to be dipped in molten lead for eternity. There's no fear, there's no guilt, there's no purgatory. So there's reasonableness. Because I remember asking Billy years ago when I was, in the earlier, 15 years ago, Billy, what else, what can I do here? He said, tell people to be reasonable. That's a big order in our world because nobody wants to be reasonable. People want to rush forward with their pronouncements of this is the answer. And that's the answer has always been love, peace, freedom, and harmony, those words. But people think you're floating, puffy clouds. What's wrong with love, peace, freedom, and harmony? It inflicts upon nobody. It forces nothing on anybody. It's just the most difficult thing for the human beings of Earth to arrive at, to embrace, and to go, oh yeah, what did we waste all that time doing? This is a premise of mine, if we got a glimpse into the life of the Plejaren people, we might go suicidal. We'd be depressed, that's for sure. Why? Because we're seeing a people who, not perfect by any stretch of imagination, but who tens of thousands of years ago, with a legacy of crazy, wild Star Wars warriors on steroids ancestors, settled it down, got peace in their worlds, and came to their senses. And they live that now for tens of thousands of years. What do you mean? It means they're not running around hoarding pieces of paper or pieces of silver or digits online, and they're not climbing over each other to acquire and amass stuff. They basically can have it for free if they want to, provided they're contributing to the society. So if you know you can have what you need, which is your wants or needs are become the same because you're not in scarcity, then you don't go into greed and amassing and fear about somebody having and taking yours. We cannot realistically grasp that now because our world is saturated with that agenda for thousands of years. But as individuals, people in your audience, my audience, we can grasp that. We like that. There's nothing wrong with peace, love, freedom, and harmony and nature and seeing life and getting simple and grateful for what we have and contributing to it. Wow. But the mass consciousness, I think, has moved not only in this country, but in many countries now, into the also long foretold worldwide anarchy, pre-anarchist state. I don't want to see that. I'm not a cheerleader for that stuff here or anywhere. But we have to, the first order of business in spiritual teaching, you're 100% self-responsible for everything in your life. 100%. And you have to see things as they are before you can change them. We can't imagine fancy timeline stuff if what we're faced with is what we're faced with in this world, which don't look that way. So we, on our individual and then slightly larger collective level, we start creating these networks of like-minded people seeking love, peace, freedom, and harmony. We don't have to make a lot of noise in the world. We don't have to go out and throw things at anything. We vibrate that because that's a stronger vibration when it comes from that place. And we see then the little momentary miracles where we start to see improvement in our own lives, as good as they may be. So that's the soapbox on that one.
Though that makes so much sense, Michael. And I'm glad that you're just going on. And, I'm not interrupting you because your stream of consciousness is just blowing me away. And that's awesome. Thank you. Moving on a little bit here, I wanted to talk a little deeper about Billy's experiences with the ETs and so forth. One of the questions I'm sure you've heard 100 million times before, why did the Plejaren allow Billy to, thank you, allow them to photograph their crafts while others have struggled to just grasp a dot in the sky? What condition was Billy allowed to photograph and videotape these crafts even way back then?
The way I look at it is that, first of all, we have to understand this isn't a new approach, a new mission from some other beings. These same beings go back about 13,500 years in our world, working with contactee prophets, Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, falsely known as Jesus, even Muhammad, and lastly, Billy. Okay, so why do we get this? Because also, with reincarnation being, according to this teaching, I can't prove it, a fact of life, there are many people who, especially in these times too, incarnating, they're reincarnating spirits. They incarnate as a new personality, reincarnating spirit in the past, also had some connection, saw these objects before throughout history, whenever they popped up, whenever they could be seen. And there's a kind of let's call it a cellular memory. There's a connection, and people's connection to the truth and connection to this mission will be triggered by that. Now, there's lots of other things about UFOs in the past and history and going, let's stay with this. So Since Meier, it's said, is the seventh and final contactee prophet, it was arranged and agreed upon early on that at a certain time in our history, as we enter the electronic age and all of this, and just before the electronic age really hits with computers and all this technology, he would be allowed, as far back as the 1960s, really, to take photographs of UFOs. And they would be, for those people who would ultimately analyze them and really grasp how good they are, they would kick people in the pants in the right direction to seeking out the truth. So, believe it or not, while there are people that have worked very hard using digital effects and models and everything else to try to duplicate his photos, the best they can do is to make really good versions of the effects, but they can't duplicate the photos, because if they ever did allow their own efforts to be analyzed, every time a computer, as they did even in the late 70s, early 80s, would show, oh, that's a small object, next to it. It's a model. But Billy's, no, they always come up as large objects a distance from the camera. So we got this opportunity so that we could accelerate our curiosity, our interest, that Billy would be the one who would really provoke the worldwide controversy, because his evidence would already be so much better than anything going back decades. And then the debate, and of course, inevitably, everything's a double-edged sword here. So the phonies, the liars, the charlatans, and it includes every one of the UFO experts. Maybe there's somebody in there that's honest enough to not pretend that they know anything. They would come forward and they'd mislead people. In 1953, when Billy had his contacts with Asket, a second contact person, she told him, in a few years from now, there'll be a new organization called MUFON. They'll be your biggest opponent. And that's true. And, recently the executive director of MUFON got busted for what? Soliciting sex with children or adolescents, whatever you want to. And I met this guy at that MUFON event I told you about. He said to I'm glad this friend of mine was there who witnessed all this stuff. He said, oh, yeah, Billy's, that's authentic. It's just too good to be, true. And it's just too good. And we were, oh, what? It took me a year in constant phone calls with him, Jan Hartson, to convince him to just put the Meier case up, which he did in obscurity somewhere on the MUFON side. He knows it's real, but MUFON itself is a disinformation organization connected to the intelligence community. So you're not going to get anywhere with them. They're not going to get anywhere either, because their agenda is to not get anywhere. Most of the people that they don't realize, all the MUFON field investigators are running around doing research for the secret military development, because that's most of what they get to film or videotape or photograph in the skies, primarily the night skies. Primarily, there might be every now and then they get a UFO from an ET group that might be floating around looking at stuff, but they're doing field research so that they can see, well, how well is our shielding technology working? What does it appear like? These poor people in MUFON think they've just discovered sliced bread. I'm out there chasing UFOs, and it's like Stephen Greer, another intelligence asset, who charges people hundreds of dollars to go and shine their flashlights in the night sky to find ET. Haven't we gotten the idea that if some advanced civilization comes here, they know how to get here, and they know if they want to bother with any of the knuckle draggers here, and shining your flashlight in the night sky ain't going to do it. But his agenda is also to keep people away from the Meier case, as is MUFON's, as is virtually every UFO expert and lecturer and organization. And that includes Towards the Stars Academy and Tom DeLonge, who is too dumb to know that that's what he's really doing. He uses Billy Meier's photos and won't mention Billy Meier's. If people in America realize what a bad price we've paid for allowing this suppression of the truth, the Meier case is really what the UFO cover-up's about. Oh, yeah, Roswell was real, but there's nothing left. The government, for the most part, the government doesn't know. There are people in intelligence and all that know about. Those are the people up there that know Meier's real, and they don't want you to know about it. It's disturbing. Let's not deal with that guy, because he could ruin everything. So I'll stop there, because I think maybe you have another question.
No, that makes sense. If he does Uh-oh. Oh, we lost him. He'll be back in just a moment, I'm sure. Wow, this is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Oh, my goodness. I don't even know what to say. Well, I'm not saying much anything because I don't have to. This is awesome. Michael's answering a lot of my questions before I even get to ask them. So what do you think, Rick? How's it going over there? Good. Hold that thought. Michael's back.
Yeah, I hit something in it.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Don't worry about it, Michael. So there are a lot of people who have had similar experiences in the same way that Billy has been in contact. Some of these are physical interactions, others are achieved through meditation or dream. Why is there a difference in these contacts, and why are there only certain people selected to have contact with ETs? If you go into that a little bit deeper.
Well, I think it'd be really interesting for whoever asked that question to name the people who they think are UFO contactees, because Meier and the player went to some lengths some years ago, and they added to, and they listed the names of all the people who aren't, who claim to be, and who aren't. Now, that's an older list. I'd be curious, because I want people to know that, well, let's start here. Are there any names that people want to say who they think are genuine UFO contactees?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I had a guest on last show. His name was Keith Anthony Blanchard, and he claimed that through meditation, he was able to have multiple contacts, and he was in the crafts many different times. He was interacting with different, alien beings through this way. It was never a physical experience. It was always through meditation.
Well, that's a nice idea. If we look at it, we go, oh, through meditation. Okay, so there's no evidence for, in terms of it's somebody's anecdotal claim. And those, for me, have no value. And the reason for it is Billy Meier is a man who has survived not only 23 attempts in his life, knife point attempts at kidnapping his children, brake lines in cars, being a man who's told 10 years before it happens, well, your left arm is going to be ripped off your body. Not much we can do about it. You sure you want to keep going? Real life stuff. We are so much absorbing, since probably the 50s or so, ET stuff. Then it was aliens too. It's aliens, extraterrestrials, little green men. Everything in our society bombards us now relentlessly with UFOs, extraterrestrials, contact, spirit. Our subconscious minds, as I like to put it, absorb this stuff, and then we start feeding it back to ourselves. And depending on a lot of factors, we can convince ourselves of a lot of things. And if we've read Billy's material, we start absorbing certain things from that, and we start thinking we're having certain experiences. So let me say this. People's subjective claims are meaningless. They're nice. Here, I'll give you an example. October 3rd, 2011, Campos do Jordão, Brazil, actually in Abernisia, up above. I'm living in the mountains in Brazil for about 5 months up there. Nice little place. I just had done an interview. I get 10 o'clock at night, a few minutes after, wow, I feel like I got to go outside. I opened the French doors, it's pitch black, and there's this, oh, what is that? Oh, it's jiggling around. It must be a firefly. No. It's moving. I got startled. It starts to descend. The way it comes down for you, you'd see it coming down like this from the sky level to about eye level and goes off to the side. It drifts off and taking about 15, 20 seconds. I'm looking at it. Whoa. Next week, go to see Billy. Tell him about, oh, yeah, a little telemeter disc there. Let's just looking in on you. And I find a photograph in a book. I just got the new edition of this book. It's an incredible book called Through Space and Time. I'm putting it up by this weekend. I hope to have it up on the shop. Anyway, there's a photograph in there from 1989 where they were taking photos around the properties because they're renovating, and they didn't see anything. But when it's developed, there's two of the same thing that I saw. They're called telemeter discs. They monitor the Earth, and here and there. Okay, but you see, I'm telling you a story. I don't have a photograph of it. I don't have a piece of evidence. And that's why I don't usually run around. I'm an eyewitness, because it doesn't mean anything. Even when there's over 130 people who have seen them. There's 5 other photographers photographed the craft that Billy's seen. But so what? It's interesting. Even the UFO part's interesting, but past a certain point, it's unimportant. Once you get that, okay, there's other craft and we can't do anything with it because they're not our, there they are, beautiful. Okay, well, what's the point? What's the reason for this? Fundamentally, the reason is to help us assure our own threatened future survival. I put out a DVD in 2004, The Meier Context, the key to our future survival. That's it. Still is. And underneath that, well, how do you do that? The core is the spiritual teaching. Learn how to think, learn to get your head straight, forget the fantasies and the fears and the conspiracies and the beliefs and the politics. Learn how life works at the level of the laws and recommendations of the universe. Hey, we may as well get in harmony with that. That's the big bopper. Why fight that? Why fight the flow and keep on trying to enforce our own petty?
Right.
There it is. So with at the root of the question about other context, what would be the point? If you really think about it, what's the point? None of us have the ear of the powerful people, and Meier didn't either, but Meier had some help here. None of us have that. We can go say, I'm in contact with some lovely folks. Some tourists from ARC Tourists have come down and they're hovering over there. They want me to do a lounge act up there. I'm going to play my guitar. Who knows? Who cares? It's unimportant. It's only if you really were having contact, because there are some people, it's in the Meier material, there's some people that accidentally came upon at one point, they had very brief encounters with. So there's a man, I think he was a German, who actually briefly met with 2 men, humans. I think they for Alpha Centauri's, or Beta Centauri, one of those Centauris or whatever. And they talked to him, the encounter, and they said, would you want to bring information forward? There is a man in your world that does. Would you? The guy said, no, I don't want that trouble. I'm thrilled to meet you, but no thanks. That's really more likely to happen because people shoot at the real deal all the time. And that is not, there's nothing in it for either party. We've got nothing as any of us individuals really, unless you want to volunteer to be in a petting zoo or something. And it wouldn't be a friendly race that's going to pick you up and go, take that one and stick them in there. So forget all that stuff. If we learn, if we just learn and accept that we are in a fantastic time for learning, there's a living prophet, so we say, right? And it's not even about him. He brought forward the stuff. He won't be here forever. He's saying, hey, it's not about me. It's not about them. It's about this. Study. Learn.
About the information, about the message.
The teaching, but you don't believe. It's not even built. It's not expressed for belief. It's expressed for study. And then, just as we do when we hook up wire A to terminal, that was B, I'm sorry, to terminal B, and then there's no sparks blowing your hand off. Instead, the sparks are the thing that come alive inside of your consciousness and meditation and all the beautiful things that are part of it. But don't worry about phenomena that I've sat down to meditate and suddenly I'm talking to all these fine folks on a ship somewhere. Yeah, okay. And the reason for that, they came 400 light years, to sit down so you could meditate on that? Okay. So no, I don't buy it and I don't care.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. I like hearing different people's perceptions on this. A lot of times folks will go along with what I'm saying. And that was a different perception of that topic. And I appreciate that, Michael.
Well,
I really do.
It's one man's opinion or point of view. I just look at it from the point of view of practicality. We're in a super troubled time where already millions of people are affected on Earth and stuff. There's one source that has delivered. Anybody can prove they're giving us the best information. Somebody's coming along from Barnard Star so you can meditate and meet them in their ship.
Oh my God, I love it. While we have, I think we're looking at about another 20 minutes here, and my God, the time has flown by. I'll be honest with you, I haven't touched 3/4 of what I had set up for
Oh,
tonight. So, if you'd like to do this again at some point soon,
yeah, yeah,
I would be more than happy to,
yeah,
engage
absolutely.
with you. Awesome. Thank you.
Now,
But before we end things up here,
yeah,
there's two things I'd like to bring up. The first is, we see some pictures that Billy took of dinosaurs from his time
no,
travel.
no.
No, no. Okay,
Yeah, I know
but we can
exactly
clear
where
that
you're
up.
going. I'm glad
Okay.
you brought that up. Here's the thing, and people will have to work this out for themselves. In 1975, Meyer had ostensibly gone on a great journey with the Pleiaren. Now, remember, I first got the transcripts of all of this stuff in 86, and they were printed between 75, 78. They were the conversations from 75 to 78. They had been run off on a primitive mimeograph machine, pre-Xerox days, and I got them in a little cafe in Sedona from a guy, and he gave them to me up in LA, actually. Okay. In there, they're talking about this great journey. And at some point in Meyer's conversation, alleged if you want, he is told that because he's already been meeting with Asket and her friend Nira, who are on this trip with him. And Ptah, the leader of the race, says something about on Earth, it's very interesting. There are two women, they're entertainers, and they're doppelgangers for Asket and Nira. They're like lookalikes, pretty close to how they look. Billy says, "Oh, great, let's go look in on them." And all I want to know what. And Ptah says, "For certain reasons, we're not going to do that." Later on in this material, Billy is told that the photographs he took on the Great Journey, which supposedly did include other worlds, dinosaurs, pyramids, different, all this stuff in not just way out in space and who knows what. He's informed, we're sorry to tell you, those photos, and you've been making them available, but we did some research and those things got manipulated. None of them are reliable. Most, if not all, will be falsified, and you're going to be attacked for it. Now, why? Oh, yeah, well, it's easy to say. The controversy didn't come up till like 20 years later. Meyer is verifiably told this in print. I've got a web page on my website, theyfly.com, Asket and Nira controversy. You see the photos of Asket and Nira. We didn't put up the dinosaur stuff. And you see analysis why they are not the same people, but they're manipulated, where Asket and Nira photos had been manipulated with the two singers on the Dean Martin show. By the way, the main one who was looking like Asket, she contacted me through another friend of hers about 3 years ago. And she said, Michelle Delafave is her name. I know Billy's an honest man. She said, once all this controversy was going, I was looking into everything, and Billy's such a guy, I'd love to meet him. And I said, well, he's not really meeting with people he doesn't know anymore, but you know what? I'm going to ask him because who knows? And I had a feeling that he would make an exception. And he said, you tell her, contact me. I'm going to meet with her. So Michelle and Susie, her friend who contacted me, went to Switzerland, and Billy took pictures. There's a video online where they're talking with him, and Billy, and they're, all sorts of cute stuff's going on, conversation. And I, shortly after that happened, I was in Switzerland, and Billy had her photograph, Michelle's photograph open, and Asket's photograph, and he says, she looks so much like her. It's just that, well, Asket looks younger. I mean, Asket's hundreds of years old. We don't have the benefit of that. He said, I can't get over, though, how much she looks like her. He wanted to meet with her because the whole thing had erupted on this. So Billy, they let the photos, they didn't make a big deal about it. They stopped selling. Some of them were still available online or whatever. But if you can't kill a man, you assassinate his character. And there were space photos around Mars and different things. And they said to him, it's just not reliable anymore. We have to disown them. It's too bad. But if this isn't the Billy Meier dinosaur photo case. It's a Billy Meier UFO case. They're all real. Now, some people got a hold of it. I think they did some manipulation, but we've got this beautiful photo book, 617 of the photo. You look, okay, good enough. And this photo, the book I was talking about, Through Space and Time, actually, my computer is resting on a little stack of them here. And they've got a lot of beautiful photos. So you can see them in great clarity if you want. You don't have to buy anything, but if you want the photo books, they're brilliant. It's just, oh my gosh, why would anybody think this guy could hoax this stuff? One-armed guy, 1970s, and he's doing all this with one hand, hoaxing photos, films, video, metal samples, and sound recordings. He's working as a night watchman, a one-armed night watchman, at the same time single-handedly building a center there. I mean, people are daffy. Nobody, two hands couldn't do it. I'll just say real quickly, when Joe Tisk, the skeptic guy, went at it, because sometime I'll go into the story, but I've done it many times. But he said, the remarkable thing isn't that Billy did all this. It would be more remarkable if it was a hoax. You'd try to figure out how he did it. Because the truth, we can grasp it. But how a man with one hand would hoax all this? No. And this is a guy, Tisk came at me for 3 months as a skeptic. We spoke every Saturday morning. And then he did the rest of the due diligence. He took on a couple skeptics and demolished it. He said, after he got back in touch with me, I'll take on any skeptics for you. It's 100% authentic. That's a military guy that vets spies and politicians and government people. This is not one of these daffy UFO investigators. I've investigated. What have you investigated? Well, somebody published some photos. Okay. Anyhow, let me stop so we can get through more stuff.
Sorry, I get just as entranced when I'm listening to you as you get going as you're saying it. So, that's okay, though. So to kind of bring out the end of the show here, I wanted to talk a little bit more about you and what you've done, too. And I think we'll do that in another show. But I'd like to, ask you about your mindful stress release program, Standing in Spirit. How was this project born, and what can it offer those who participate? Do you incorporate your martial art and Qigong experience into that?
Okay, glad to answer, and I'll try to be succinct and fast. Starting in about 1990, I had been doing Tai Chi for a number of years before that. A friend of mine who was a Tai Chi guy met this Chinese guy who had just come over. He was living in Venice, California. I lived not far away at the time. And he was teaching Qigong, standing Qigong in the garden. And I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. So I started to study with him. And after, I don't know if it was 6 months into it or whatever it was, I had just broken up in a relationship with this nice girl. I didn't think she was so nice at the time. I was angry and my solar plexus was going nuts. And I'm standing there doing this thing. And a little voice pops in my head and says, think about your father. I'm like, what the heck? Now, the Qigong, we just stand there. We're quiet. Nobody's talking. I'm not running in, just total silence and stillness. Suddenly, for about 15, 20 minutes, I'm going through my childhood with my father. Things, the emotions, the stuff, the fire, the bombs are going off. And suddenly it's over, and I go, oh, what difference does that make? What's that? And it's kind of like, think about your dad again. Oh, yeah. Well, he did the best he could, didn't he? I wasn't feeling anything. It was like, where'd the anger go? Because I didn't even know I had it. And then suddenly I'm standing there going, what the heck? And now I hear, think about Jan again. I'm going, nice girl. Uh-oh, what's this? Every day for a couple of weeks thereafter, I'd come to class. I couldn't talk to the teacher, but I didn't talk English well. Speak English well. I couldn't talk English well. So I was standing there and I would bring up something to provoke myself, some emotional thing, an unresolved problem. And I started to run it as a process, the way this thing had presented itself to me. And I would find out where it was in my body, and I would allow it to come in and come out with the breath. No martial arts, no fancy, just standing, breath in, breath out, observing my own emotional reactions, any of my mechanisms to try to deny or justify or defend. Could I accept this? Could I let it go? Did it go somewhere else? Whole thing, whole process. After about 2 weeks, I felt like I could teach it. So I approached a woman in the class who was a psychotherapist, social worker, the whole thing. I said, hey, something came to me. Would you be interested in trying this little process? She said, sure. So I said, first of all, don't tell me anything about what you're going through. I'd be useless. I can't analyze anything for you. I'm going to go take you through steps. You're going to do it. And we're going to authorize, if you to begin with, your own highest level of inner wisdom. By the love, force, power, will of your consciousness and spirit, you disconnect, forgive, release these limiting patterns, influences, behaviors, beliefs, and you remove and replace them with the positive, loving qualities of your spirit, your consciousness. Okay, fine, that sounds good. All right, so she picked something. To this day, I don't know whatever it was she worked on. And she's going through this whole thing. And at the end of it, she said, wow, that's different. That's really a breakthrough. And so she gives me this breakthrough endorsement. And I find another therapist I know. And then I try a few more people. And then a couple of weeks after that, I'm teaching it at a whole being weekend in San Diego. So at an event that I'm presenting the Meier case in 2006, I do a presentation of the Meier case. And then the rest of the whole thing is this process. I have the PowerPoint up, and there's a group of people, and I put a whole group through it at once because I don't have to hear people telling me their boring stories. I just have to take them through this, and they take responsibility. This is before I knew even about the spiritual teaching stuff. And so we do the whole thing there, and people, if they want, they can see it. I have a downloadable version of it online. And then people, I said, if you want to share anything, a bunch of people say, yeah, well, this is what happened for me, and I had this thing, and I just saw it, and it changed, and because I show people how to check if it's really changed or not. Oh, I'm free of all my problems. No, you're not. Let's just take a step back and here's a little way you can check some stuff, because things don't necessarily go away all the way. If they do improve, you can find out and be honest with yourself so that we are constantly taking the self-responsibility. All right. So after a few years, because I had it on my website, and I thought, I think I'll send it to Billy because maybe this doesn't work with getting more and more out there with the Meier stuff. And I get an answer back. No, keep it there. If you can do it at the end of every presentation, do it because it's consistent with the spiritual teaching. I'm going, really? And so as I began to study the spiritual teaching more and more, I then saw how it was a component that was compatible. A self-accountability meditative process. There's many things that people, I'm not the only one that could come up with or that are included, and Billy's got all sorts of stuff. So if it answers it that way, and I was taken to Europe by a consultant to Princess Diana, not when she'd passed, but I taught business people and government execs. I put them in groups, and they were in Germany and Holland. I taught the groups. People wrote me for a couple of years there because it's simple enough. You don't have to do yoga, breathing, and get all weird. You just breathe, breath in. You're receiving this moment in your own consciousness. You're not defending. You're letting go. Oh, but what if I start to want to resist? Then you focus. There's the resistance. Okay, take it in. So the resistance starts to show itself to you. Oh, well, but my issue is this. Well, the resistance came up, so let's look at that. It's just how the human being can, in a gentle, kind of non-invasive way, not forceful. You never get more from your own inner wisdom than you can handle. And you do that. As a matter of fact, how about this? If anybody in your audience buys from our shop, whether it's a download or a hard copy, any actual book or DVD, film, whatever, any actual book as a download or as the hard book, you can get some downloads, I think, for $15, $20. And if they say free and they use your name or the name of the show, and if they want, I'll give them download the free DVD to them on that process. It's got a presentation on the Meier case from 14 years ago and the process. Or they could say they prefer a different one. I just saw a book or a DVD here, a download that I prefer. Make it that. They just have, if they don't find a place in the order, send me the email. So I know. So when I get it, Joanne wants this, or Glenn wants that. Well, okay, just order something. So I'll give you the free thing, and you might get something that's worth more than what you've ordered. I don't care.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. So that's a little about that.
No, that's fantastic. Listen, I'm going to wrap things up at this point. Again, I could sit and talk to you all night, my friend. And like we said, we'll do this again, and we'll be in touch to coordinate. But I want to thank you once again for coming on the show tonight, Michael, and taking the time again to express your experience. Now, this one thing I want people to keep in mind. This is one man's experience. Okay, we all have our own truths, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't met anybody who has had such a shallow life they couldn't give some interesting stories of growth at some point. Okay. Whether you agree or disagree with Michael, it doesn't matter. Okay. It may not fit into your belief system. It may not fit into your scheme of understanding, or it just doesn't resonate with you. It doesn't matter. The fact that this is being put out there, this information is out there, it's there for you to make a decision. Okay. It's there for you to decide what's right for you and leave the rest.
Yep.
Beyond that, this is beautiful. Because I still have questions rolling around in my head, but I know we're out of time here. So I'm going to save some of those questions until the next time we get together here.
Well, sure. As a matter of fact, I'd like to simply also suggest, not to burden you more, but if your listeners have questions that they want for our next interview, send them to you. If anybody has a question they think I might be able to help with before then, you can send it to me. I don't mind any challenges or questions. It is what it is, and people, like you're saying, people have to decide for themselves. Billy wrote a wonderful article called "To Be of Equal Value." We don't have to have so-called or purported ET or meditative experiences or special anything. Intrinsically, each human being is of equal value, not necessarily equal ability or wealth or accomplishment, equal value in the creation. That's what's important. We then have the same value intrinsically as Billy Meier or Joe Blow or Gene, John, whatever. Remember it. And you won't have to be looking up to anybody. You can look straight out and you can look within it. That's all we do.
I think that's very sound advice. And it's been said many different ways throughout my life. I've heard it from many different sources, but it all says the same exact thing. So, I mean, if that's the case, there's something to be listened to there. Again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure and delight. Guys, don't forget to check out his work. All the description is... I'm sorry. Wow, I'm just messing this up. All the links to his work is in the description below. And anything else that we're talking about off camera will go right into the description as well as time goes on. Please support Michael. And again, check his stuff out. He's offered to, have you purchase something, you get something for free, or you get to check something out that he'll send to you. Reach out to him. If you have questions, reach out. He wants to talk. He wants to share. And that's what it's about. So thank you very much. Please support our friends. We have a couple of them in the description. Rick's Realm, thank you very much for coming on the show and standing tall and keeping a good solid foot in the ground, keeping us grounded here. Guys, check out Rick's Realm. He's got a great new channel coming out called Give Me Something to Eat, but we'll go into that later on. Great cooking show. That being said, Goof On Radio Stream will be on tonight at 10. And I think our good friend Rich Giordano. Been on the show a couple times, so we'll be heading over there at some point. But again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to wrap up the show. If you guys want to stick around for a minute, I'll say my goodbyes off camera. Otherwise, if you have to go, that's cool too. But thank you very much for coming on the show, and I look forward to the next time we talk.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I had a fantastic time. I always have a fantastic time. It doesn't matter what ends up being. I always have a great time here. And this was awesome to have Michael Horn on. I had been talking to him for several months now, and I'm very happy that he had the time and ability to come and join us this evening. And again, I hope you guys got something out of it. It is only the beginning of what we're doing here at Dark Hour Paranormal in a certain respect. And I thank you all for joining us tonight. We have what do I have next? I'll be honest with you. I got to look at my schedule. I've got the next 2 weeks are very booked up, so I'm going to let you guys know who we got coming on. At any rate, folks, have a wonderful rest of your night, and I'll see you next time on Dark Hour Paranormal.